Hey, thanks for taking time to check out the video. I appreciate that. So, Tablerock, let's talk about stop number 3, Ozark Division BFL. That was fished up there yesterday, which would have been April 15th, so 2023. Uh, Old guy here, so I got my stats, right? Let's look at those. Big bass boater, Brandon Ackerson at 5 pounds, 1 ounce. Good fish, solid fish. And the boater on the winner side, or the winner on the boater side, Clint Williams. Woohoo, 5 pounds for 18.6. I saw this bag, folks. Good fish, really good fish. Impressive sack. So good job to you, Clint. Co-angler big bass was Kelsey Ray, 4 pounds 6 ounce. Knocked me out of my 3-3 spot that I had there for a little while. But yeah, 4-6, another good fish. And then winner of the co-angler side, yours personally, me. So brought home a wonderful champion trophy. Tablerock champion. So 5 bass limit, 5 fish limits for 13-13. Got a 4 ounce penalty because I had one of fish die. I did everything but CPR on this fish. I had fin clips on it, gave it, Mountain Dew, G juice, fresh water in the live well. Had a little ice I kicked in there. Just this spot wouldn't make it. Fought hard, gave it all it got, and just gave it to the ghost. So didn't make the trip back. Did get to weigh the fish, but had to take that penalty. Put me at 13-13. Second place came in at 13-11. So just 2 ounces, and then had if you weren't over 11.4, you were not in the top 10 as a co-angler. So pretty stacked field, and the bite went exactly like I was expecting. The weights were a little bit lower. I thought on the boater side you'd have to have 20-pound sack, but the fish were not up spawning. The bigger fish were not up spawning like a lot of people hoped they were. We had a plan, and I say we, big, massive acknowledgement to my boater, Brent Supner. Heck of a guy, great fisherman, very nice boat. Thank you for toting me around in your skeeter all day. Knew where some fish were. He knew where a group of fish were. Mixed bag of largemouth, smallmouth, and spots. Didn't he said that he didn't hardly see any other boats that were stopping in there. It was less than 5 miles from the boat ramp, but further than one. So I'm not going to give away anything more than that. But it was a windswept point with a good shelf or a flat, so to speak. So it dropped from 0 inches out to about 12 feet, and then dropped off pretty steep down to about 18, and then out at about 22. There was a bottom composition change. It went from hard fist-sized rock to softer mud. And then as you work from the deep side of the point out around to the other side, it got more pea gravel mixed in. And there's a lot of standing timber out on the deep side and out on the deeper drop. And then up on the shallower side was a lot of cedar brush and things like that was flooded. The lake was right at full pool, but they had been drawing water, so they brought it down from days previous. But Brent had been catching fish up there. Felt that there was a good chance to get a good bag together. He had had time to practice up there and had not seen the bigger fish up on beds yet, so he didn't have a whole lot of confidence in that. And with the other tournament that was going on up there, the Big Bass Bash, we both thought there was going to be a lot of guys up there that were just beating the bank, and the fish were going to get highly pressured, so we planned to do something different in the morning. We also wanted to get off the lake, to a fishing spot pretty quickly, because there was a lot of boat traffic. The Big Bass Bash brought in 753 boats, I believe. We had 145 in our field, so almost 1,000 boats out there. There was a boat accident on the Big Bass side of things. Don't know the details of it. Pray that everybody was okay, but saw some sketchy stuff. A guy that passed us was teacupping, and if you don't know what that is, it's when your bass boat gets up and it does this across the water. He was teacupping across a wake in front of us, and Brent knows how to drive a boat, so he backed off, and we cut away from it and got into this area and settled down and let all the craziness pass us. And I had 3 keepers in the boat by 8:23. I had the trifecta. Caught a smallmouth, caught a spot, caught a largemouth. And Butter and I, Brent and I, we were going back and forth. I'd catch one, he'd catch one, I'd catch one, he'd catch one. And the bite went pretty strong up until almost 11 o'clock. We were catching some short fish and things. You know, total on the day I caught 13 fish, 9 keepers, so I got a cull a couple of times. And the weather was cooperating. It was partly cloudy, beautiful sunrise. The clouds were obscuring things, but we got those beams of light that showed through the holes. And you know, there were times that there were 3 and it was mostly cloudy, and then it would be 6 or 9 of these, you know, kind of like spotlights now, looking back on it, you know, so maybe that was my spotlight morning on the point. Um, but not to bore you too much with the details, you know, I was dragging this particular bait through, and we'll talk about my baits here in just a second, and, you know, just surgically dissecting fish. You know, Britt was fishing a couple of different ways. He did have live scope. He used it super strategically, and it worked out really well for the both of us. But as the conditions started to change and the clouds died off, the sun came out a little bit more, and then it got really bright, and the temperature definitely went up. You know, yesterday I think the temp was a high of 85 or 87, something like that. So it got hot. You know, I was shedding some layers. And as we rounded the point, I picked up a couple of smallmouth, and he picked up a small largemouth. And then we started noticing that there were some fish up on beds, and there were some beds out deeper. We'd found some cleaner water. We went from having 18 inches of visibility out to about having 6 feet of visibility. And I think a lot of it is because we got into a cove that was wind protected, and that really helped keep the water a lot cleaner. And as we saw that, we got to talking about it because Britt started fishing to bedding fish, and we discussed how we could surgically work together to do this. And I told him that I would continue fishing the way that I was if I could have the deep water option into like the center of the cuts. So if you picture a shallow bowl going back, and there's going to be a center ditch that kind of runs up that, or center drain, you know, if you think about it that way. In almost all cuts, there's going to be some type of depression that works its way out in the middle, and sometimes it's kind of shaped like a Y or whatever your topography on the shore tells you. And he agreed, yeah, you know, absolutely work that deep water edge, because I was seeing a lot of spawning beds that were absent of fish by the time we got over them, and that's because they were moving around a lot too. But I felt that there were still good, strong fish out a little bit deeper, and that would curtail to how I was fishing and not rob Brett of any opportunities up front. We could share the water really well. And it worked out strategically. Was able to cull some fish this way. He was able to cull some fish this way. And what we really ended up needing, I think it was by 1:30, we both needed just a big kicker fish. We were hoping for, you know, I was hoping for a spot up there in that 4-pound range, or, you know, a big smallmouth that seemed like the fish I was catching. You know, all the smallmouth I caught were right around that 3-pound mark. And he was hoping for a big largemouth. So, you know, we got to doing some different stuff. I got to throwing a wacky rig around. This is a Yum Dinger, and it's this color in particular is called Ozark Shadow. It's just a green pumpkin kind of two-tone with a purple fleck in it. I'm not going to talk about, you know, these lures because I didn't catch too much on them. I only caught 1 fish on that. Caught another one on a wacky rig, a Yum Dinger, but it was a color called Emerald or Elder something. Reminds me of Skyrim, but it looks a lot like a bluegill. And then other than that, you know, when I was in on some timber and stuff, as per this week's practice, you know, I was throwing around a different assortment of shaky heads. So again, this is just a Zoom trick worm. This is on a 1/8 ounce head. And I went through a couple of different types of worms and a couple of different types of colors. Caught 1 or 2 fish on that, but it wasn't my leader. And then for trying to get a reaction strike and fishing some of that timber, that standing timber and stumps and stuff, I was throwing a 1/2 ounce. This is a KVD Strike King 1/2 ounce spinnerbait, just a tandem, you know, setup. I didn't get anything on that. Didn't see any fish follow it out or move on it. And then I'm really putting a lot of faith and starting to try to throw this lure a lot more. And this is the Berkeley Money Badger series. This is a 5.5. It's one of their smaller baits, you know, with the amount of pressure that the lake was getting. I wanted something that was a little bit more subtle, and we were fishing clean water. So there was nothing happening on reaction baits. Britt caught one on wake bait and one on a swim bait, but it just really wasn't the most powerful bite. Now, for me, I went a very specific direction right from the start. This was one of my primary weapons that I talked about even in my earlier video, I think. And that was with a drop shot. Now, my drop shot setup I will talk a little bit about because I think that may be key. But again, you know, with my channel and just getting started here, I don't know everything. I'm just another dude out there fishing. So what worked for me at Tablerock on Saturday, you could probably go out there today and catch them 10 different ways. You know, that's just the way it goes. But we'll talk about this pattern because it was a winning pattern. You know, it allowed me to put a big W in the box and accomplish some goals for 2023. And if I have confidence in it, I hope it would help you fish better the same way. So I am fishing this on 6-pound Seagar in VizX. And this is a leader. This leader here is 15 feet, and that helps me because it allows me to judge depth. Okay, and it's my connection knot is an FG knot, and I have that spooled to Power Pro 12-pound braid. Feel very confident on this setup. I'm throwing it on a 7'6" Carbon Light 2.0 Johnny Morris series right from Bass Pro Shop, and it's paired with that same 3000 series reel. Okay. Great drag system on this, really smooth. You know, a lot of these fish, you're just leaning into them as you're taking up constant slack, so you're not setting the hook. There's no snap to it, nothing like you got to step back, and you know you're not going to see that on that huge hook set on this type of fishing. You're just pulling that G Finesse 1/0 hook right up into the fish's mouth. Right, it's not a big hook as you can see based upon my finger size. And that's anchored off with a 3/16 tungsten weight. And that tungsten weight really helped me with this setup. This rod's so sensitive, and you hold it like you're holding like a new baby bird, right? You don't want a death grip on your rod. You just want the rod to have a cradle. And you want to keep your elbow in nice and tight and give yourself a good anchor point. Because I could tell the difference between when my bait was coming up, let's say over a tree branch, right? And that weight had lost contact, and my bait would be doing this as I move it around. Okay, I got to be careful, I'll hook myself. Right? I could also tell the difference between when my weight was dragging over rock versus a soft bottom like mud or clay. You know, I'd be dragging around and it would feel soft or mushy, and then I'd start feeling that click, 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 click. And I knew I'd found a hard spot. Now that could indicate that I'm on a bed. Because the bass have, you know, they've fanned away all that debris and silt and vegetation and stuff so that they could spawn on that hard spot. You know, but regardless, it's kind of like a, hey, ding, 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 you know, something's going on down here, right? And transmits that energy. And the bait that was really my only bait, the bait that I threw all day, is this bait right here. Now, it might be hard to see, and I got the package. But we'll see if I can get the colors in there, if you can see the colors. You got two side by side, and these are used. Okay. And they're not large, as you can see. There we go. Okay. They're a red color. They're called Red Crawler. If I figure it out, I'll try to link stuff and tag stuff so that it works, you know, and you guys can find it. But it's a robo worm. I literally asked Aaron and Martin, I said, please help me channel my drop shot today. All right. If you guys don't know, he was a legend in the sport. We lost him a few years ago to cancer. My heart goes out to his family and everybody always, so I speak of him with great respect and admiration. So that was my setup. So I'll run through here really quick how to hook one up. Okay. If you don't know how to tie an entire drop shot setup, or you would like me to do a full complete lesson on that, or lesson sounds so formal. If you'd like me to do, you know, a quick video on it, it wouldn't take long. You know, the FG knot that I use is my connection to connect my leader to my main line. There's all kinds of videos out there. Jacob Miller, or Jacob, give me just a second. Jacob Wheeler is the one that I watched and kind of take his advice from. So first off, always you want to make sure that you're hooking these straight up. The idea is to make this a weedless rig. So when it comes out, you're going to want it riding with the flat side down. So we'll say the brown side, it's brown on one side and red on the other. All right, so you just come in, hook point like so, right directly from the top. And in the right light, like now, you can see through it. All right, so it's like so. And then at that point, you just want to push that hook out. Oh, not out of the whole worm, just out the bottom, out the brown side. And bring it all the way up to this bend. Okay. You see that? Okay, rotate that around 90 degrees so that the red side is now up. And that worm is down on that keeper. Okay. And then you just find out where the bottom of that hook is and measure it with your hand. Bunch up your worm and push that hook from the bottom out the top, straight up. And it's important that it's straight so that it comes out and it looks like that. See how that has come out? Okay. Now what we do is we bring that back up like this. We pinch right where that hook point is. I'm just going to pinch it up and pull it back in there. And that tucks that hook point back in there now and allows that bait to slide right up and over tree branches. It literally, you can drag it right up and over just about anything, right? Now here's on YouTube where I hook this in my ear, right? But it's relatively weedless. And again, that's why, your hook set's going to be a lot more different, right? When that fish bites that bait, because you let the weight rest on the bottom and you work it with a high rod tip and you let that bait dance up here like this. And this bait underwater will dance parallel to the bottom, okay? So when it hangs there, it's hanging there like such. So when you twitch the rod tip, this twitches underwater. Right? When you lift it, it lifts and it falls, and if you let slack into the rod tip, it slacks and it flutters down. Right? And you just bounce it. And that's how I won the tournament. I would cast this out anywhere from 20 to 40 feet behind the boat or in the direction that I was fishing. And I would let it sink to bottom. And then I would just very gently with the tip of my rod, I would just raise it up. And I really had to watch which direction the wind was blowing so that I could keep my line relatively taut. You want it just to come down and give you just a nice little bow right before it starts into the wave action or the water action. Okay. And that's what you're watching, is that little bow in your line right before it goes underwater, because that will give you the degree in which you're moving your bait. Remember, when you move your rod tip a little bit up here, it can jump a lot down there. Right? So that bow, if you picture this as the bow, right? When you move the rod tip, that bow just boop, boop, boop. So you can see how much you're moving the line. And then kind of use that to visualize, are you making that bait do this? Or are you making that bait do this? And yesterday it was the latter. Okay, they didn't want that bait as active. They didn't want it moving around too much. What I found is that I'd let it drift all the way to the bottom slow, and that just meant that my line had that bow in it the whole time. I mean, literally, if you would have just walked over and just touched my line, I would have felt it. I caught a clam. I felt a clam bite my weight. I felt it, and I brought it aboard. I'll post some pictures. It's a great story. If you want to hear about it, let me know. I'll do a video. But yeah, it's all about having that line control and feeling subtle, and that's what it was. It was just a boom. And then I would feel pressure. And there's a way to gauge when you do it. And this is why you need to practice, because you need to understand are you hung up on something? And how do you deal with that? Or is that a fish? And if it's a fish, You just kind of want to start reeling and just lean back into it and let the fish do its thing, and take that fine wire hook and just let it penetrate and let it penetrate. But you don't want to snap pop like that, because they got a good grip on it. And if you do, they'll probably just open their mouth and they'll spit it out. Okay. And then once they're on, it's okay. If your drag's making all kinds of noise, it's supposed to, right? If you're fighting a fish and you're not hearing drag, you're you're not doing it the best way you could. All right, I'm no expert, but unless you're like flipping with 65-pound braid and you just want to just pulling them out of the trees. So, but that's entirely something new. So, all right, well, that's it. That's how Tablerock came down. That's how I put the W in the column, and certainly is a humbling experience. I went through many emotions, and I'd like to thank MLF for putting on a great tournament. Again, my boater, Britt Sumner, man, you're a gentleman. I'd love to fish with you again. Looking forward to the next time we share some water. And my great, wonderful travel partner, my supporter, my partner in life, Lily. She is fantastic. She's the one that helps contribute to a lot of my social media. And then some of the folks behind the scenes, my little brother and stuff, that's helping me out with the long-term project. We're looking forward to things. So got a lot more content coming. I'm starting to feel a lot more comfortable with things. So I think it'll be a good time. Friends, keep fishing. If you need somebody to go with, give me a call. If you got some questions on where you're at, what you're doing, send me a message, something like that. Find me on social media. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. And just keep fishing. It'll definitely keep you happy. So have a great day.